the sky.
Assalamualaikum everyone, this is me Hania, e-commerce student at Rehan School Online Academy Page. So today we have Mara with us again. Salama, how are you?
Malaikum assalam. I'm doing great. It's good to be back.
Okay, so Maya, my today topic is sky, and my first question is, what exactly do we mean when we talk about the sky?
The sky is basically everything you see when you look up from Earth. Scientifically, it's the atmosphere that wraps around our planet, consisting of all the gases that make it breathable. To the eye, it looks like a giant blue dome during the day and a deep black canvas for the stars at night. It's essentially the space between the ground and the edge of the universe.
Okay, so why does the sky appear blue during the day?
Sorry? I think that got a bit scrambled in the transcript. Were
Why
you
does
asking where this
why does the
Are you asking
sky
where
appear blue during the day?
Oh, you're asking why the sky is blue.
Yeah.
It's actually all about how sunlight interacts with our atmosphere. Sunlight looks white, but it's really a mix of all the colors of the rainbow. When that light hits the gases and particles in the air, it gets scattered in all directions. Blue light travels in shorter, smaller waves, so it gets scattered way more than the other colors, which is why our eyes pick up that blue glow when we look up.
Okay. So, why does the sky look different at night?
That's a great point. At night, there's no sunlight hitting the atmosphere to scatter that blue light. Since there's no light to bounce around, the sky looks black, and we can see straight through the atmosphere into the darkness of space.
Okay. Why do clouds have different shapes and sizes?
It's all about the weather conditions where the clouds are forming. Basically, it's a mix of temperature and how the air is moving. When warm, moist air rises and cools, the water vapor condenses into tiny droplets. If the air is stable and rises slowly, you get those flat, wide sheets called stratus clouds. But if the air is unstable and surges upward quickly, you get those big fluffy piles known as cumulus clouds. Wind and turbulence just add to the chaos, stretching and sculpting them into the different sizes and shapes we see.
Okay, why does the sky change colors during sunrise and sunset?
That's a great question. It's actually the same scattering effect we talked about, just on a bigger scale. When the sun is low on the horizon, the sunlight has to travel through a lot more of the atmosphere to reach your eyes. By the time it gets to you, the blue light has been scattered away completely, leaving only the longer wavelengths like red, orange, and pink to make it through.
Okay. Why does the sky sometimes look completely clear?
That usually happens when the air is really dry and there's very little pollution or dust hanging around. When there's not much water vapor or tiny particles in the air to scatter the light, it creates that crisp, deep blue look. High pressure systems often push out clouds and pollutants, leaving the atmosphere transparent and still.
What is atmosphere and how is it connected to the sky?
The atmosphere is essentially the layer of gases that completely surrounds Earth, acting like a giant invisible blanket. It's made up mostly of nitrogen and oxygen, but it also holds the water vapor and dust that create everything we see up there. So, while the sky is what you see when you look up, the atmosphere is the actual physical stuff that makes it possible. Without it, we'd have no blue color, no clouds, and no air to breathe.
Okay, why can we see clouds in the sky?
It's pretty wild to think about, but clouds are actually just floating collections of tiny water droplets or ice crystals. These droplets are so small that they stay suspended in the air instead of falling immediately. When sunlight hits those droplets, the light gets scattered in every direction, which is why clouds look white and visible to us against the blue backdrop of the sky.
Okay, how are clouds formed?
It's all about water vapor. When the sun heats up the water in our oceans, lakes, and even soil, it turns into an invisible gas called water vapor and rises into the air. As that vapor gets higher, it cools down and clings to tiny bits of dust or salt in the atmosphere, turning back into liquid droplets. Once enough of those droplets gather together, they form the clouds we see.
Okay, why do some clouds produce rain while others don't?
Wait, I might have missed a bit of that.
Why do some clouds produce rain while others don't?
It all comes down to how full the cloud gets. For a cloud to rain, those tiny droplets have to collide and grow heavy enough that the air can't hold them up anymore. Some clouds are just too thin, or the air below them is too dry, so the water evaporates before it ever hits the ground. The big, dark ones are basically just saturated sponges that finally hit their limit.
Okay, how does a rainbow form?
It's like a giant relay race in the air. It starts with water vapor rising and cooling into tiny droplets. Those droplets bump into each other, merging and growing until they get too heavy for the wind to keep them afloat. Once they reach that tipping point, gravity takes over and they fall as rain.
Okay, why does the sky become dark before a storm?
Wait, I'm not sure I caught that. Did you mean why clouds turn dark right before it starts raining?
No, before a storm.
Wait, the forest is gone? That's a
No,
pretty heavy thing
Maya.
to say. Oh, okay, you got me.
Okay, I'm now repeating. Why does the sky become dark before a storm?
No problem at all. The clouds turn dark because they're becoming incredibly dense. As more water droplets crowd together, they create a thicker barrier that blocks out the sunlight. So instead of seeing that bright white scattered light, you're seeing the shadow of the cloud itself.
Okay, what causes lightning?
It's basically a massive static electricity discharge, similar to what happens when you touch a doorknob after walking across a carpet, but on a cosmic scale. Inside those big storm clouds, tiny ice crystals and water droplets are constantly crashing into each other, which builds up a huge electrical charge. Positive charges gather at the top and negative ones settle at the bottom. When that electrical tension gets too high, it snaps. A giant bolt of electricity arcs through the air to balance things out, heating the atmosphere so fast it creates a shock wave we hear as thunder.
Okay, how does thunder happen?
Thunder is basically the sonic boom for lightning. Lightning is so incredibly hot that it heats the air around it to thousands of degrees in a fraction of a second. That air expands outward so violently that it creates a shock wave, which travels through the air as a roar. It sounds like it's rumbling because the sound waves are bouncing off clouds and the ground, reaching you from different directions at slightly different times.
Okay, why do clouds sometimes appear white and sometimes gray?
Actually, clouds aren't ever really clear. When they're bright white, it's because they're full of droplets that scatter all the colors of sunlight. If they look a bit clearer or thinner, it's usually just because there's like less water vapor, which lets some of the blue sky peek through.
What causes fog and how is it different from a cloud?
Sorry, I'm a little lost there. Which part of what we just talked about were you thinking of?
What causes fog and how is it different from a cloud?
Fog is basically just a cloud that decided to hang out on the ground. It happens when the air near the ground cools down enough to turn water vapor into tiny liquid droplets. The difference is just where they form. Clouds form high up in the atmosphere, fog forms at surface level. The physics are identical, only the altitude changes.
Okay, how do weather scientists predict what will happen in the sky?
They use a mix of ground stations, weather balloons, and satellites that act like giant eyes in space. Satellites watch cloud patterns and air pressure from above, while balloons send data up to check the temperature and humidity at different heights. Then they feed all that information into massive supercomputers that use mathematical models to simulate how the air will move. It's basically a high tech guessing game based on physics, looking at current conditions and comparing them to similar patterns from the past to see what's likely to happen next.
Okay, why can we see stars at night but not usually during the day?
They're actually still there during the day. Our sun is just so bright and close that it's like completely washes them out. It's like trying to hear a whisper when someone is shouting right next to you.
Okay, why does the moon appear to change its shape?
It's not actually changing shapes, just how much of it is being lit up by the sun. Think of the moon like a giant mirror. As it orbits Earth, it's always half lit up by the sun, but from our perspective down here, we only see the part that's reflecting light toward us. When it's between the Earth and the sun, we see a thin sliver, and when it's on the opposite side, we see the whole bright face.